Good day, ladies and gents, and welcome to Navigating Your Calculator. And the calculator that we'll be using going forward is the HP 10B2 Plus. You can use the HP 10B2, but the latest version is Plus. I don't see much of a difference between those two calculators. So if that is something you have, then by all means, off you go with it. If you have any other calculator, as long as you can follow us in terms of the variables we use, and the steps that we follow, then by all means, have fun with your calculator. But I will be doing the navigating on this HP 10B2 Plus. Now, this is a little bit daunting when you see all these little keys, blue, orange, and white. So let me make you comfortable. The white is just a normal calculator. So take a look at your screen up at the top. I unfortunately can't draw on this calculator because it will disappear on me. So you have to follow my cursors. So if you look at the top, if I go nice and simple, 1 + 1 equals, you'll see a very normal calculator. But of course, we've got all those little orange ones that we're also going to be working on. And anything that is blue is more from a scientific nature, and we're not going to be using those blue keys at all. Let's start. I cannot switch this off because if I switch this off, my calculator disappears. It takes a while to find it back, and at times it doesn't even record when it comes back. So I'm going to leave the switching off, but switching it on, nice and easy, because right at the bottom left hand, you've got an on key, and as a matter of pressing that on key, and your calculator will start showing digits on the screen. If nothing happens, then of course you've got to see whether you have batteries, because sometimes it might sound very weird, but sometimes it's like a computer that doesn't work and we've forgotten to plug it in. Similar, if your calculator is not working, if you don't see anything on the screen, maybe all we've done is actually forgotten about the batteries. But should you want to switch this off, now notice how the orange function, we call it the second function. I might say orange every now and again so you know which colors I'm looking at. But if you take a look at that orange function, you'll see that if I do that and press that key, it's going to switch off. Okay, so that's how you switch it off. And then just pressing it back on will start getting the calculator all warmed up and ready for your calculations. You've got this little C key over here, and that is obviously to clear. So just by pressing that key, you'll notice that it actually clears. The difficulty is sometimes that this calculator is, you are computing so much into this calculator that what we may not know is how much of the variables that you are putting in, how much of that is being kept in the calculator's memory. Remember, this is a very fancy financial calculator, and you can actually request it to remember certain things, to keep things in memory for you to recall at a later stage. But we don't want to go that route. Of course, if you are very advanced and you know what you're talking about, then of course you're probably not doing this navigation at all. But if you know how to do it, you know when to recall it, you know what's computed into your calculator, then by all means you can use that. So now notice, if I do any form of calculation in this calculator, as I did say that if you just clear all, it takes that away. But just to make sure that we're not carrying anything from the memory into our next calculation, it's always preferable that you shift clear all. Now shift second function, orange button or orange key, shift, and you'll notice just under there it says a see all, shift clear all. I've got a habit of doing shift clear all about 3 times before I do the next calculation. It's just found that sometimes when one works a little bit too fast or when one is not focusing, you are going to start pressing a whole lot of keys into your next calculation just to find out that you've actually got it wrong. So that's what we have. Now, our digits, our decimals. How many decimals should we be working on? I prefer to work on 5 decimals because you're going to find when we do advanced, you're going to be looking at 2 growth rates or 2 interest rates. Now, if you only have 2 decimals, your result will be very different to someone who perhaps has 4 or 5 decimals. Because remember, it is sort of rounding it off. And especially if you are a delegate who is studying for any form of exam, it's highly recommended that you use at least 4 decimals. Now, how do I get to those 4 decimals? So now look at your screen. I currently have 4. I'm going to switch it to 5, and then I'll switch it back to 2, and I'll switch it back to 4, so you can see how it actually works. So take a look at our second function, our orange, and now look at your equal key at the bottom. You see it says DISP. I want to display 5. So shift, second function, display 5. And all of a sudden I've got 5 decimals. I want to change it to 2, shift, display 2, and I've got 2 decimals. I actually want to keep it to 4 decimals, and I've got 4 decimals. There are times, I'm not too sure why, I don't know what it is we tend to do, that once you've switched off your calculator and you come back on, it reverts back to the default of 2 or 4, depending on when you bought the calculator, what it looks like. You know, should that happen, don't stress. It's a lot of time. If you are stressing, just go and do your display back to 4 or 5. Okay, that I think is important to start off. I'm going to clear all the time. Now, we have a second function, orange little key under your MAR. It always to me sounds like a shortened version of March. If you look at that, you'll see at the bottom it's got begin and end. And you'll notice that on the screen it also will show begin and end. How do I go from begin to end? It's again my orange, my shift, my second function, and takes away the begin. When begin doesn't show, it's because you're in end mode. Now, when would I be in begin mode and when would I be in end mode? This is very important in your calculations because it's actually going to tell the calculator which way it's going to actually start working. So think of this. If you are investing into an investment, do you do it at the end of a period or do you do it at the beginning of a period? Do you start investing at the end of a month or do you start investing at the beginning of a month? Now, when I say that, most people will go, oh, but I only get paid on the 20th of the month, so therefore I only actually start investing at the end of the month. Granted. But even if I'd love to draw here, but I can't, my calculator is going to disappear. But think of it, this is very good to process the picture in your mind. When you put in that 100 Rand on the 30th or the 25th of the month, or whether you put that 100 Rand on the 1st of the month, when is interest going to start accumulating? When does it start earning interest? Does it earn interest 30 days later, or does it earn interest the minute you make that investment? Would you agree that the minute I invest 100 Rand, interest starts accumulating at the beginning when I actually put in that 100 Rand? So don't think of it as paydays, I'm paying at the end of the month, etc. Because some of us will start actually pay in on the 1st, some of us do it on the 15th, some of us do it on the 20th, etc. But it's not necessarily equates to when you're going to earn money. It is really, when does that interest start accumulating? When do I start attracting? And you don't put in 100 Rand and it doesn't sit there for 30 days before you start earning interest. It starts earning interest from day one. So that's begin. So think of it like this all the time. Every time you're making an investment, you're giving money away. As you give that money away and you invest it, interest starts, you start earning interest right away. When then would I use my end mode? Well, end mode generally comes when you're repaying loans. Car finance, mortgage bonds, we're going to keep to those two. Those of you, some of us have not gone, and some of us don't have ever had car finance or have ever had mortgage bond, but think of the process. Go to the bank, you ask for a loan of R1 million. What happens then is that the bank loans you R1 million, but you only start paying at the end of a month. So although that the interest starts, you start incurring interest the day that the R1 million was paid, your payment only comes in at the end. So it accumulates a 30-day payment interest, and then you settle your first payment. So every time you're having to repay something, pay back a loan, pay back the mortgage, the car finance, you're doing it at the end of the month. The only other time that you perhaps are going to be using the end mode is if we're looking at annuities in arrears. Because remember, sometimes I invest R1 million today in the beginning of the month, and I only actually ask for a payment made at the end of a month, so it's in arrears. Interest starts accumulating on that R1 million the day that you invest in it. Okay, but what the calculator is doing is saying, okay, I'm investing it for 30 days, then you draw money out. So now I'm only going to actually incur, or rather start earning interest again once that payment is out. Okay, so try to explain it that way. I think all these explanations I'm giving you is going to make a little bit more sense when you actually do financial calculations. So now let's look at our variables. We've got 5 variables that we generally work with: N, IRR, PV, payment, and FE. Those are the 5 that we generally are going to work with. There are times, however, that you will only input 4 variables to ask for the 5th one. So you're solving for the 5th one. Or there are times that you will only be putting 3 variables and you solve for the 4th one, because you don't always have information for 5 variables, or you don't always have information for 4 variables. So you're either using 3 variables and you're solving for the 4th, or you're using 4 variables and you're solving for the 5th. Those variables are N. Now N, we can say it, you're going to notice we sort of switch terminology as we go along, but N is the periods per year, or it can be a term. So I can say it's compounding monthly, so my periods per year would be 12, or I'd say it can be compounding annually, that's my period is 1, or I can say I'm saving it for 5 years, my term would be 5 years. So N indicates that period per year or the term. The IRR is obviously the interest that I have received or the interest that I'm going to be paying. The present value tends to confuse a few people, because if we say present value, our mind automatically goes, that is today's value. It's present, it's a value today, which is totally and utterly correct. There's nothing strange about that, but you're going to notice, especially when we do the advanced module, that that present value at times is actually a future value. It's a present value in 10 years' time, which we have to save towards, in which case it becomes future value. But let's read, because I can see some sighs taking place, like going, I'm already confused at this point. So for now, we take present value as today's current value, which of course then I have future value. What does future value says? It says that if my present value is 100, then in a few years' time, whatever time period, in a year's time or 2 months' time, etc., that 100 Rand is going to equate to a particular future value, depending on, obviously, the interest rate. It could be even inflation. So if I put in a future value, also with a term and an interest rate or escalation rate or inflation rate, and I ask for the future value, it's going to say, Tom, your 100 Rand today is going to be worth 50 Rand in a few years' time. Okay, we always think it's going to be worth far more at a later stage, but it's not always the case. Then, of course, we've got a payment. Now, the difference between the present value and a payment is, at times, we use the present value as a purchase price, as a lump sum that's been invested. So we don't have a variable here for lump sum investments or a cash investment. That would be obviously the present value. So I am giving the insurer R1,000,000 lump sum. There's my present value. That's what I've invested. Or I can say I'm going to give the insurer or the investment house R1,000,000 every year for 5 years, and that, of course, is my payment. But we do have times that we do both a lump sum investment and a recurring premium. And you see now I'm looking at 4 variables to resolve the 5th one. So that these keys sort of interplay with one another, and we're going to be looking at that. I think it's going to get exciting as we go along. Now we have our nominal and our effective rate, which is our second function that you'll see right at the bottom there. Now you'll notice that when you go to the bank and the bank says, please invest in our 30-day deposit, 30 years, our 30-day deposit or our 1-year deposit, etc., because fixed deposit, because we are going to give you 9%. That 9% is nominal, i.e. it's an assumption that I'm only going to give you 9% a year on that investment. And we know, of course, that's not the way it works, because what they do is they give us that 9% compounded every single month. So I give them R100 this month in the beginning of January, and at the end of January, well, actually, from a bank perspective, it's every day. From a bank perspective, it's every day, but we're not going to go into every day. Okay, let's just keep it monthly. This is not something that you can need. Well, if you are in the bank environment, I suppose you're going to work with a 365-day period, but we're going to keep it to 1 month. So if I invest R100, at the end of the month, would you agree that 9%, of course, from a factor perspective, so it's not the full 9%, but then it starts compounding from your first R100. Then the following month, it takes another interest, 9%, on capital plus interest. Then the third month, we're going to take capital plus interest. So we are compounding. At the end of the day, you have what we call an effective rate. You didn't really receive 9%. You effectively received 9 point something or even 10%. Makes sense? So let's see if I can show that to you. At the moment, you'll notice if I shift clear all, you'll see that I've got 1 compounding period there. I'm going to show you how to change those compounding periods. So I've got 1 compounding period, which means that what I'm going to show you is the 9% nominal. Would you, in your mind, if you draw a picture, if I put R100 today and the bank only gives me 9% nominal, what should I be getting at the end of the year? Potentially 109,000, right? 109,000. Yeah, 109 Rand, my apologies. Gee, from 100 Rand to 109,000, I wouldn't mind that investment because that's only compounded annually. Now we're going to see if I change it to compound every 12 months, what am I going to get? So let's start with the very basic one. I've got 100 Rand and I'm just putting in 100 Rand, so that is my present value, that is the lump sum I'm investing. Let's begin mode. I'm getting 9% a year. I'm only investing it for 1 year. What is my future value? See, nominally, I'm going to get 9 Rand because it's a nominal rate. But that is not really how it works. It works effectively, i.e. you're going to get more than 9%. So let's shift clear this. But now I've got to tell the calculator that I'm looking at 12 periods a year because there's 12 months in a year. It's going to compound 12 times in that year. So I now have to go tell the calculator, please compute 12 periods a year. How do I do that? Of course, you can look at the cursor and the screen. I'm going to do 12. Now my second function, because look at where the compounding periods is, just under payment. That's where the compounding periods are. So I'm now going to go shift PYR. Now, if I clear all, I should have 12 compounding periods. This is a nice little function, ladies and gents, is to, when you clear all, is just to constantly look at your screen to understand how many compounding periods do you have, because that can really go so awry in a calculation if you're not sure what compoundings or the wrong compounding periods a year. So that's also very important. Now, because I've got 12 compounding periods a year, watch what happens. I'm still going to invest my 100 Rand. It is still going to 9-hour R is still the interest rate. But now, it is a year, but I have to tell this calculator it's for a year, but for 12 periods in that year. Now look at where that N is. Can you see at the bottom it says term times PYR? That one term times periods per year. So I've got to go 1, second function, PYR. Can you see now the calculator saying, okay, this 9% is compounding 12 times in this 1 year. Now ask for the future value. Can you see? I'm not only getting 109 Rand, I'm getting 109.38. That is my, so effectively in my investment, I'm getting 9.38%. Now, I don't want to have to do this every single time. I want to do a calculation and just know off by heart, or rather a quick step, quick way of understanding what my effective rate is going to be. So I now want to know, in that 12-month period, what would my 9% nominal be? Sorry, what would my 9% effective be? So I first got to tell it what the nominal amount is. And remember, I've got to keep it at 12 compounding periods because it is 12 months in 1 year. So I'll take 9. I'm going to second function, shift, and look under our R is nominal. I say nominal. Now I want the effective rate. So what do? Is I say shift, effective, 9.38. So it's a shorter way of actually doing what I did earlier on in terms of actually finding the effective rate. Okay, if I want the nominal rate, well, I've got the effective rate, so it's shift, nominal rate, and it's going to give me 9. You could have 4 compounding periods. So that's, let's clear all. So that's a matter of saying 4 and telling the calculator that you've got 4 compounding periods. So now this is slightly different. If I got 9 nominal, it's going to compound 4 times. My effective rate is a little different. You see that slight differences that we have there. Do I have 4 compounding periods? Yes, I do. Shift clear, shift clear. Okay, so that's the shift effective type thing that we actually need. I've spoken to you now about the on-off, how to change the display into 4 decimals, 5 decimals, etc. The importance of a begin and end mode. Remember always to get to your orange keys. It is your second function, to that orange key. If you clearly just want 4, then you don't do that second function. Okay. I've explained the variables. I've also explained that you're going to at times only need 3 variables to get your end result, i.e. to solve for the 4th variable, or you're going to get 4 variables to solve for the 5th variable. I've explained to you how your nominal and effective rate works. I've also showed you your compounding periods per the term, and it's generally compounding in a year. You don't have 12 months compounding in 20 years. You'll have 12 times 20 years. Okay, so if let me see if I can explain something. Yeah, let's just go to 12 periods a year there. Let's see if I can quickly get something in my mind. So if I say 100 times 12 times 1, you know, I'm trying to actually explain something, but my mind's going, I can't seem to get it quickly in my head on how to explain. I really wanted to show you that if I have 2 years, and it's compounding monthly, then I'm going to have a 24N. It's 24 periods. Does that make sense? I know what I'm saying, but for some reason, all of a sudden, I cannot show it to you, which is very unusual, but that is where we are at. Ladies and gents, that is just a very simple navigation. You'll notice that there's so many other keys that we are going to be looking at. For instance, when we're doing a cash flow, we're going to, let me just clear, if we're doing a cash flow, we're going to be using this cash flow function here. The key, that's what we're going to be using. When we do amortization, we're going to be looking at that orange function in terms of amortization. And that amortization is when we're looking at mortgage repayments, car finance, etc., which is a very interesting exercise, which we will be doing. I think it's in the basics calculation. I think it's there that we're going to be touching on. So that is also, we're going to be looking at that amortization as well. And then we're going to be looking at cash flow. And that basically, of course, in our cash flow, we're going to be looking at internal rate of return, which is that little button there. And we might even be looking at your net present value, which is that little button there. Otherwise, ladies and gents, those variables and those keys that I've spoken about are probably the most important. But as I'm saying that, I see this little function, plus and minus. That plus and minus is as important, I suppose, as begin and end mode. Because you must remember, the calculator needs to know which flow is this money coming in. Is it coming in? Is it going out? So think of it like this. If I want to invest something, would you agree that it's coming out of my pocket into another vehicle? So it's a minus. I've got money less. Out of my pocket into an investment, it is a negative because it's something that is you giving away. When I'm looking at a maturity value, i.e., or an annuity that I'm going to receive, what do I use? I use a plus. Because why? It is something that is coming towards me, something that I'm earning, something I'm receiving. Now you'll notice that when you have nothing reflected on your screen, it's actually a plus. If I'm wanting a negative flow, then I actually have to go and go 12 negative. Clear all again? 12 negative. If I just wanted 12 positive, it's just a matter of you don't have to go and do the plus sign at all because it's automatic plus. So again, let's just recap on that. When I am investing something, it's coming out of my pocket. That's the negative component. That's a negative amount that is leaving me. So I'm left with less money. And if I'm receiving money, an annuity, a maturity value, etc., then it is a positive sign. Now, you don't always need to use the plus or the minus. I'm very, very bad at times when I come to doing financial calculations because in my mind, I don't feel I need to work with the plus and minus because I know the flow. So if the maturity value ends up with a negative, I don't stress because I know it's only because I didn't compute that into the calculator to give me the proper negative or positive. So I just flow with that. But it becomes very important if I am doing a present value, a payment value, and a future value. That becomes important because the calculator needs to know, hey, hold out. What did you receive? What am I giving away? Did you give me a cash amount as well as a payment? Or did you give me the cash amount and I'm giving you the payment? So that's when it becomes important when you're using these three variables at the end here, the present value, payment, and or a future value, then to use the plus or the negative as your cash flows, or rather your flows when it comes to the calculation. And I think, ladies and gents, that is it. That's navigating your calculator. It seems so daunting, but it's actually not. I think perhaps the most daunting part of it is when you actually get stuck into financial calculations itself and you look at this calculator and you go, what am I doing? No, I'm teasing you. It's all fun, all nice and easy. It just takes practice, practice, and practice. Thank you, ladies and gents.